Hello, hello. We are live. I am live. And I am so excited to be coming to you to do a question and answer. I've got a lot of new subscribers, and I am so appreciative of you all. And so I wanted to kind of delve into who I am and answer some of the questions that you have for me. And I want to start off by asking, I see at least there's one live viewer right now. If you can hear me, type in the chat where you are joining from. While you do that, while you share where you are joining in from, I'm just going to give you a brief taste of my bio. I am Patricia Brooks, and I'm an American expat living in the south of France. I moved here from Richmond, Virginia over 6 years ago. And now I have found my home. I've created a new business here, helping women who are ready to start the next chapters of their lives find that confidence and courage to do that. And on this channel, I talk about my life in France, moving abroad, and finding that power within so that you can finally start living the kind of life you know you were meant to live. And today I am live, and I am going to share with you a little bit about myself, give you a little bit more in-depth information, but then answer your questions. So I've got some questions here. If you have questions, feel free to type them in the chat. I'll get to as many as I can. I see that By the Book is joining us live from Southern California. Welcome, By the Book. So glad that you are here. All right, so I'm going to first start off with a little bit about myself. You might be wondering why I decided at age 51 to move to France. Well, I'm trying to figure that out myself. I'm in the process of writing my third book that I hope will be published this year. I've been working diligently on it, and it really explores why France? Why did I feel so inclined to move to France? Why did I quit my job and stop everything that I was doing in the States to move here? And so that delves into it on a really deep level. But suffice it to say that in 2014, I started traveling to Canada, Quebec City, and I started to dust off my high school and college French. And I was encouraged by the Quebecois. And I thought, well, maybe I could speak French fluently. And that got me dreaming about moving to a French-speaking country. And so the first draw for me to France was the language. I had considered moving to Quebec because I really love Quebec. It is such a quaint city, but I couldn't see myself dealing with the weather there. So France was my next stop, and I visited here for the first time in 2015. And I thought, yeah, I could see myself living here. So why France? The language. I wanted to become fluent in the language, and I have. So that's the starting point for why I decided to move to France. If you're just joining me, be sure to let me know where you're joining from. And if you have any questions for me, please be sure to type them in the chat. I have a list of questions. I'm going to get to as many of them as I can. All right. So that's point number one for why I wanted to move to France. I fell in love with the language. It's such a beautiful language, and I wanted to sound like the French sound when they speak. And though I'm fluent, I don't really sound as lovely as they do, but I'm working on it. I'm working on it. So the second reason I decided to move abroad was because I love a challenge. And as crazy as that might seem to some, just being stagnant and not feeling like I was being pushed or being challenged felt like I was just stagnating. And so I thought to myself, I can create challenges for myself in the United States. And I had writing my first book, self-publishing that, all of that, right? That was challenging. But then I found myself looking around for more challenges so quickly. And I thought, well, if you move to France, you're not going to be looking around for a challenge anytime soon. And it's been 6 years and I really haven't. I mean, I feel like I'm good. I'm good with the challenges now. But that was the second reason for me wanting to get to France. So why France? Because of the language, because it would create this challenge in my life. And it's such a beautiful country. I do now recognize that one of my key core values, one of the principles that is most important to me is beauty. And there's so much beauty here. All right. So, all right. So the second question that I get often is, well, why did you decide to move to Perpignan? Why did you decide to move to the region that you're in? So I see some people typing in. I see B. Brooke has joined, and I see Jess A. She says, I respect and value your honesty. Love your channel. Thank you. Thank you, Jess. And hi, Yolanda from Niger. She is a fellow Richmonder who has made the plunge and moved to Niger, Africa. And I have nothing but high respects for her because she is running a school there and she is doing a bang up job. All right. So why Perpignan? Why this region? So my first year, I lived in Perpignan. And that was because when I came on my second trip to France, it was a scouting trip to kind of find where in France. I fell in love with this city that I had only found out about in a guidebook. I read that Salvador Dali, the artist, had spoken about the train station and called it the center of the world. And in the guidebook, there was also this really pretty picture of the river that ran through it. I'm like, oh, I think I want to go there. And so on a day trip, I was in Toulouse. On a day trip, I visited Perpignan and fell absolutely in love. And so it was a feeling. People ask me, why Perpignan? Why Serres? It was a feeling, first and foremost. And then after that first year, I couldn't really find the neighborhood within Perpignan that felt right to me. So initially, Perpignan was it. But then as time went on, 9 or 10 months in, I found myself saying, yeah, this is close, but it's not it. And I chose Serres, the village that I'm in now, because I had visited it there one time in my first year and thought, yeah, maybe this could do. I didn't have that same feeling, but I thought, well, I'll try it for a year. And if not, I can move someplace else. And while I was deciding where after Perpignan, I had the option of going closer to the Mediterranean Sea, right? Or closer to the Pyrenees Mountains. And I believe that I'm an earth sign. And I'm a Capricorn. And so I feel like my inner goat guided me to the mountains, and because they're so solid, they're so grounding, and that they felt good to me. And so that is why I chose Perpignan initially. That is why I moved out closer to the mountains in Serres. But I still am very close to the sea. I'm about a 40-minute car ride from the Mediterranean. So I get the most of both worlds. All right. So why France? Why the area that I'm in? All right. Thank you, everybody who is joining me live. If you have questions for me, go ahead and type them in the chat, and I will get to as many of them as I can. I'm going to start now with a question I got earlier today, and it's from Maya. I don't know if Maya is joining us live or not. Yes, from the US. I think, well, I'm not sure if this is the same Maya, but she writes, hi, Patricia, how long did it take approximately for you to be comfortable having a conversation with someone in French? And what was the most difficult part at first, speaking or listening to others? Thank you. All right. Well, so how long did it take for me to become comfortable having a conversation with someone? As I think back, those first trips to Quebec, when I was just relearning French, it was hard because everything was new and I had such limited vocabulary. So I wouldn't say it was then. I would say that I started to feel more comfortable in my conversations after I went to Canada probably 4 times in total, and I would say it was during my second scouting trip in 2016. So I started relearning French in 2014, went on a couple of trips to Quebec for a week here, a weekend there, all the while continuing to listen to my Pimsleur method on my morning walks. And I think by 2016, during my first scouting trip, I felt comfortable having conversations, and I felt like I could understand slow-spoken French. Now, that fast-spoken French, that is a very recent thing for me, to really be able to just sit and listen, hear, and understand fast-spoken French, like fast-spoken English. Although sometimes I still struggle with fast-spoken English. So I'd say a couple of years, but this is not a couple of years living in France. A couple of years of practicing with Pimsleur, of taking some trips to French-speaking countries and dabbling. I think I also did join a meetup group that were Francophiles, and so we would meet weekly, and I would go to that meetup from time to time. And so it took some time. It's a process. Learning a language is a process. And so if you're working to learn a new language and you're feeling discouraged because it's taking so long, be consistent, be persistent, and know that will pay off in the end. And what was the most difficult part of my learning French? Was it speaking it? Was it listening to others? And there's also the reading and writing components. And I've been told by people on who I've been conversing with on dating apps that when I'm writing, they're really happy. But then when I speak to them, sometimes they will say, and it's a backhanded compliment, I guess. Sometimes they'll say, "Oh, you write French so much better than you speak French." I'm like, "Oh, well, thanks a lot." But I think for me, the thing that was the hardest for me was listening to and hearing fast spoken French and understanding it, because it just wouldn't register. And it's been a couple of years now that people can speak at the normal pace, and I don't have to say, speak more slowly. And so that was the last thing that came to me. And I think it was the hardest thing. I think speaking, I still am not as fluid as I am speaking English, just because sometimes I don't have the words. Sometimes I don't have the expressions. When I'm doing these YouTube videos, I will, spout out all of these expressions and adages that are just somewhere in my brain, and I haven't developed a library of that for French in my brain yet. I'm working on it, though. I'm working on it. So thank you for the question, Maya. Great question. Let's see. The second question is from somebody from a video somebody had commented on. And the question was, do I have a resident permit? And I do. So my first year, I came on a visitor visa, and I applied for that in the United States, and I was approved, and they put the visa in my passport. When I renewed in France, I got what is called a resident card, or carte de séjour, and which was good for a year when I renewed it that second time. And so, yes, I have a resident card. I'm not just here for 3 months and then country hopping. No, I'm permitted to stay in the country. Now, the visa that I'm on is a profession libéral visa, which allows me to work here, run my business here. And that is good for 4 years. So I've got another couple of years on that. So yes, I do have a resident permit. All right, let me see what's coming in live. Hi, Jody from Baton Rouge. So B has a question. Let's see. How much of a Spanish or Basque presence is in Perpignan? Would you say it is a cultural mix of French and Spanish? So the region that I'm in is called Catalan country. So there's French Catalan and there's Spanish Catalan. And so Pays Basque is, Basque country is further to the west, and there's not that influence here. There is a Catalan influence here. So, not necessarily Spanish, but kind of it's a mix, right? Here in Perpignan, here in Surrey, I am 10 minutes by car from the Spanish border. So this weekend and, weekends in the summer, in the spring and the fall, you will hear Spanish or Catalan and French spoken here. And so I'm actually learning Spanish, because when I do travel to Spain, and I will sometimes have a problem in a parking garage, and I ask, well, do you speak French? They're like, no. Do you speak English? No. Catalan or Spanish? And so I'm like, okay, Spanish is the next language that I'm learning. So yes, so there is a mix of that Catalan culture here in Perpignan, but also in the village that I am in. Good question. Thank you, B. Let's see what else we've got. All right. This is a question from By the Book. Are there restrictions involved with purchasing a home in France as an American citizen? I have not yet purchased a home here in France. It is on my list of things to do at some point, but Americans can purchase homes here. I'm not sure if you saw my live stream last week with Baguette Bound. If you haven't, you might want to check that out, and also check out their channel, because they have lots of good informational videos, and they just bought a house in France. And so I'm sure they're going to talk more about the process, more about, home ownership here, but there is not a restriction. Americans can buy property here in France. Okay. I think that's the question. All right. Let me get to one of the questions that I got earlier. So a question about selling your house in the United States. When should you do that? So there is a thing called capital gains tax. So if you are a French tax resident, if you're living in France for more than 6 months, I think that's what it's defined as, then you become a French tax resident, and you have to declare your French tax. You'll do your French tax declaration. And so if that's the case, and you choose to sell a home in the United States, France can take capital gains tax from you. So if you're planning a move and you feel like you're not planning to move back to your home in the United States, and I think this may be true for other countries, but I'm just speaking for the United States, you may want to consider selling before you become a French tax resident, because it can save you a lot of capital gains tax. All right. So that's my understanding. I'm not a tax professional. You may want to consult somebody who is, so you can get a better understanding of that. But, if you're considering moving to France and you have a home you want to sell, that might be the thing to do. Okay. And that question was from Parisian at Heart from earlier on. All right. Wow. These are some good questions here. All right. Benjamin Caldwell, thank you for your question. Did you ever consider working for a French company, or did you always know you would start your own business? Well, that is the line I told people. That's the line I told myself before I moved to France. Well, when I get there, I'll look around and see if I can't get a job at a French company, because they'll take me more seriously because I'm here, I'm on the ground. But when I was here for 3 months, and a former coworker asked me this question. She's like, how's your job search going? And that was the moment that I had to be honest with myself and with her that I really didn't want to work for anybody else. I'd had my fill in the United States. And so it really wasn't the thing that I wanted to do. And so honestly, no, I thought about it. I thought about it as a way to get here. But when I was here and I had the opportunity to look and see what might be available, I really didn't want to. And I'd gone to coach training in 2015. So a few years before I moved to France, and I'd started a coaching practice there and had a couple of clients, and they weren't my ideal clients. I had to refer most of them to a therapist because that was something that I wasn't skilled in and really didn't want to, delve into. And so I thought, well, maybe coaching wasn't for me. But when I got here and having had the experience of doing something that felt outside of the realm of possibility for me, just because I was a shy introvert. I was not a big world traveler. So, and really moving abroad was something that was very, very recent. It wasn't something I dreamed of all my life. I thought this feels really good. And I want to help other people who may be hesitant, may have some fears or some doubts to work through that so they can have this feeling too. And so it wasn't until I guess 2 years in that I'm like, oh yes, coaching, you've got the coaching certification, you've got an area where you can help people, you need to start a business. So hope that answers your question, Benjamin. All right. All right. From Michelle T. If you didn't live in the village where you reside, what other areas would you consider? And what do you think of Brittany and Bordeaux? I will be scouting in 2025. All right. This is a question that I think a lot of people struggle with. Where, France has so many different areas and each has a different feel to them. If I weren't living here, it's a really hard question to kind of hypothesize. I have not traveled extensively in France. I'll tell you the places that I've been. I've been to Toulouse. I've been to Lyon. I've been to Paris, of course. I've been to Rouen in Normandy. I've been to Marseille. Where else have I been? I've been to Pau. I have not been to Bordeaux. I have not been to Brittany. I'm trying to think, are there other? I've been to other areas in the Pyrenees Oriental, like Les Angles and Font-Romeu, closer to Andorra. And so where would I live if I weren't living here? And I've been to Narbonne. And Narbonne, every time I go to Narbonne, which is not too far from Perpignan, it's about an hour from Perpignan, I think, yeah, this might be a nice city for me to live in. I've been to Montpellier as well. I think when you're considering where to live, I think there are a couple of things that you need to consider. Like for me, as I shared at the beginning, one of the things that I considered when I was in Perpignan said, okay, this felt right in the beginning, but now it's time for me to pivot. I considered, well, do I want to be closer to the ocean and do I want to be closer to the mountains? And for me, the ocean is beautiful. I love the fact that it's not far from me, but there's an element of that feels transient, that, the waves wash things in and out. And I felt like I wanted something more solid, like the mountains. So asking yourself questions like that, I think are important. Also, I think things that are important to consider are, do you need to be close to a big international airport, or how far do you want to be away from an international airport? Because for me, that wasn't something I baked in. And now when I go back to the States or I travel internationally, that the local Perpignan airport does not service, then I either have to go to Barcelona, which is a 2-hour drive away, or up to Paris, which is a 5-hour car ride from Perpignan after I get to Perpignan, right? After I take the bus from Serray to Perpignan. So it's a little bit inconvenient. So I think those are some things to consider as you are considering where you might want to settle. Also, I do have a resource. I don't know if I have it listed here. That is a location finder that will, here it is, that helps you, that asks some questions that helps you to kind of hone into a particular area that might be good for you. So you can go here and you can download that, answer those questions, and kind of get a little bit more clarity on that. The final thing that I want to say about where, and what places might be good, is to kind of envision yourself what it is that you see yourself doing when you are living in your dream country, be it France or elsewhere. What are the things, what are the hobbies that you plan to participate in? If you want to go surfing, well, here in the Mediterranean, we don't have any waves. So you might want to go to Aquitaine or the Atlantic where there are waves. So thinking about those things can also help you to say, oh, I need to be near the sea, or I need to be, near the Atlantic. Or maybe you want to ski and you don't want to have too far to drive for that. Those things can help inform what might be most suitable for you. All right. So I hope that answered that question. All right. Let's see what else we got here. All right. I had this question on the list from before, and I will answer it. Busy Bumble 1131. I am curious about the dating scene as an African-American woman. Is it easy meeting men, and what has been your experience? Dating is dating. I think that, so I've been on dating sites. I haven't gone out to clubs or things of that nature. So, and I don't go into a job, so I don't have access to, more people than usual. So I think it can be challenging in that respect. But online dating is fairly good, and I've had some good experiences. But it's not been an easy thing. I think that as an African American woman, I have not had a problem having somebody or having interest in me. Right? That's not been a problem. So I think the thing that I found most challenging or find most challenging is that I'm not in a big city, right, where there may be a more international scene of expats, number one, to date, but also of perhaps French people who have traveled more broadly or have lived abroad. And I think culturally, I think that has been a challenge, dating and feeling, because for me, when I date somebody, for me, when I have friends, I kind of want to feel understood. And the fact that I moved abroad alone and have been living in this foreign country and have been finding my way, dating somebody who has only ever lived in Perpignan or in this region can feel a little bit uneven, or feel like there is a part of me or my experience that, and nobody can fully understand it. I understand that, but there's a part of my experience that is not understood, and that doesn't feel that sometimes that feels off, a little bit off. The other thing that I will say about online dating is, because I'm so close to the Spanish border, and maybe this is another reason I need to really get my Spanish language skills up to par, is that I would say close to 40 or 50% of the profiles that I look at are men who are in Spain, right? And so so that can be a challenge. But in terms of being respected, in terms of being asked out, or by, I've dated Frenchmen who are Black. I've dated Frenchmen who are white. That has not been an issue at all. So Busy Bumble 1131. I hope that answers your question. All right. Let's see what else we got. I'm not sure if I understand this question. Just I'm retired. What are some resident visa renewal requirements you may need to return to the U.S., like updated forms? So if I understand this, when you renew, so if you're retired, you're probably going to be coming to, and you're coming to France, you're probably going to be coming on a visitor visa. And so what are the requirements to renew every year? Well, that is that you still have that income that shows that you can support yourself, that updated bank statements. But beyond that, I mean, I don't know that there are any updated forms that you would need to have. You might need, if your passport's expiring, that perhaps, but I don't think that there are any. I'm not really sure. I understand the question, but I think that that's what it is. And so renewal is everything that you needed for your initial visa. And I don't know if there are any additional updated forms that you would need. If that doesn't answer your question, let me know. All right. And let's see what else we got. Let's see. So B says both Bordeaux and Bretagne have a big expat community from the UK. So language-wise, it will be easier there since most of the local businesses are used to catering to them and hence speak some English. And that can be true. So that could be, and if that's, I know there's some other areas as well. Like there's some areas in the Southwest that I've spoken to a couple of people who say, yeah, I want to steer clear of there because I kind of want to be able to speak French. And when I was there visiting, I didn't need to necessarily speak as much French as I would have liked to. So I think there are other pockets as well in other parts of France that are similar to that as well. So if language and speaking, having English speakers, that would ease your way. Is something that you want to consider. That is something else to consider when you're picking a location. Thanks for sharing that, B. Okay. Any thoughts on Aix-en-Provence? Yes, Aix-en-Provence was, in 2015, I came to France for the first time, and it was Paris and Aix-en-Provence, but I was only there for a couple of days, and they just weren't my cities. I think the question of where and location is such a personal one that sometimes it's, like I said, for me, Perpignan was a feeling, Saray less of a feeling, but now it is the feeling. It's like, oh yeah, this is home. This feels like home. So I don't have any more than that it was a nice place, but it wasn't my place. And anybody who's watching have any thoughts on Aix-en-Provence, please feel free to share for Jody. Thanks, Jody. All right. Guto, salut from San Diego. My wife and I really enjoy listening to you. Thanks for all you're doing. You are welcome. Thank you so much for telling me that. It means so much. All right. Birth certificate for the question about updated forms. So I had a conversation with Baguette Bound last week where they're talking about birth certificates and names on birth certificates. And so if you have name changes, that you need to have those documents that show when those names were changed so that the French people can kind of put it together and say, oh, yes, you are the same person. So if you have a birth certificate, if you've been married for a couple of different times, if you've had name changes, you're going to want to have those name change documents with you. All right. Sandra D. Did you have to close your U.S. bank account and open a French one? Could you have kept your U.S. bank account? So I have U.S. bank accounts and I have a French bank account or two French bank accounts. I did not have to close my U.S. bank account. I do need to have a U.S. address for taxes and for other things. I just recently did my French tax declaration. I had somebody do my French tax declaration. And one of the questions on that is, do you have foreign bank accounts? And so I had to list those all for her to put in the system or whatever. And they do whatever they do with that. With my French bank account, I had to fill out a I don't know what the number is. Is it a W-9, W-4, W-9 form? I don't know. To show that I'm an American citizen, whatever. I initially had to do that. I haven't had to update that recently, so maybe it's about time they contact me for that. But yes, I have French bank accounts and I have US bank accounts. And I've kept my US bank account open. All right. Here's a question that I don't know the answer to because this is not my experience. Can a person still collect pensions and Social Security from the US if residing in France? My thought is yes. There are Americans who are retired here in France. So I think that that's possible, but I don't have any experience on that. So I can't answer definitively. But I think the answer is yes. What has been your experience as an African American in France, and particularly in the area where you live? It's been good. It's been good. I haven't had any problems, but I'm an American, right? And so that I've heard people who say that they're American and that they're Black, but until they speak, there is a different feel to the interaction. I haven't had that. And I also have a friend who is from Mali, and he's been living here for years, and he senses that there is different treatment. So I'm an African American woman here, and so I haven't had any treatment that has been untoward, or I could say that's racist. Now, that's not to say that I haven't had experiences that felt like they could be. But one of the things that I've worked on doing is, and it was something, it was an effort initially, was that my experiences in the United States, and when I felt slighted or that something was off because of my race, I would automatically kind of put that armor on and kind of get that hard exterior and a little bit of an attitude. And so tell this story. One Saturday was market day. I was standing in line to buy flowers, and the merchant was helping somebody, and I was next. And a woman just came up and started saying, "Oh, I want these." And the merchant, waited on her. Didn't say, "Oh, no, she was next," or anything. And this was early on. I was probably a year and a half in. And my initial reaction was, oh, that's racist, right? That was my initial reaction. And I thought, Patricia, you're here in France. Maybe that was racism. Maybe that wasn't. You don't know. And you don't want to bring the attitudes that you had here and ruin your experiences. And so I think that was the one time that I thought, this doesn't feel right to me. But I kind of said, okay, maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. And I just didn't go back to that florist. But it's been good. It's been good for me. Okay, here we go. Here's Sandra D. You can still collect Social Security and pensions, but you can't use Medicare overseas. Thank you, Sandra. I've not been to Nice. What did you like when visiting Nice? I've not been to Nice. That interview with Dawn was in Agde. Agde, Agde. That was before she was in Nice. So I don't know, niece. So I can't. I, it's on my list, though. It is on my list. All right. Some of these questions about location, I won't be able to answer. Oh, Junket 3000 said she had a similar experience in Nantes. I just walked away. Yeah, I mean, I feel like, some people will say, "Oh, you're being naive to say, if somebody is treating you, and they are coming from a racist place, that if you don't react or you don't respond in a certain way, then that is wrong." However, sometimes we experience what we what we put out, right? If we get into a huff and we then had that experience, if I said, "Oh, that was racist," and I tucked that away, and then the next time something like that happened, I tucked that away, then all of a sudden I'm having all of these experiences that don't feel good to me, right? And so that's where I stand with that. All right. Where did you get health insurance when you first arrived? Well, so as a condition of the visitor visa, I needed to have insurance that showed that I had coverage to a certain amount, that they would be able to airlift me out of here if something happened to me. And I got traveler's insurance. I used Seven Corners traveler's insurance for my first couple of years for the visitor visa, and that worked. Now, of course, I'm on the healthcare system. I have the Carte Vitale and also a mutuelle, which is supplementary insurance. So that covers what the Carte Vitale does not. Okay. These are such good questions. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You're making my job easy. Does your American credit score apply in France, or do you have to establish yourself in the French credit system? So the American credit score does not apply here in France. And I don't know what the French credit system is. A lot of times I think it's if you have a contract position that is of indefinite length, a CDI, right? And so if you want to borrow and you have a CDI, a job that's a CDI, that kind of serves as your credit, in my understanding, in my limited understanding. Let me caveat that. So it's not, I don't know that they have credit bureaus here like in the United States. It's just very different. All right. Huh. Is France it for me, or do I plan to stay here permanently? I, struggle with answering this question. Yes, this feels like home to me. But so did the US. I never until the 2016 timeframe thought, oh, maybe I'll go and live in France. And so I think this is it for me. Starting over in a new country with a different language is a big deal, a big ordeal. And so now that I feel like I'm settled here and things are kind of going smoothly, I don't want to uproot and start someplace else. Well, having said that, you never know what life will serve up to you. So yes, France is it for me, for as far as I can see. I'll leave it there. Here we go. Kanonima. I hope that I'm pronouncing that correctly. No credit score in France. Banks are looking at your employment status and your average compensation. Yep. All right. All right, here to this point. Just said, girlfriend, I never thought I would ever leave Los Angeles, right? It's one of those things. It's like, oh yeah, this is great. I'm good. And then it was like, oh, wait a minute. I'm not there anymore. And I thought that was my forever home. So um, let's see what else you got. Did you ever think about being a digital nomad? I am not nomadic. I am not a big traveler. I need to put down roots. So being a nomad, being a digital nomad just doesn't, it's not me. It's not me. So, here we go. Another one. Do you recommend Airbnb for when you first arrive until you find a permanent address? I understand that you need a French address when applying for the visa. When I applied for my first visa, I spoke with somebody at Vacation Rental by Owner. They had a place in Perpignan, and I worked with them and got an agreement with them that I showed for my visa application. So it worked out well for me. I think one of the things that depending on your visa type, well, you kind of want to have a place set up, because if you need to validate your visa, which means that you will pay your fee, you will need to go for a chest x-ray, a medical exam. They'll send the information in the mail to whatever address they have on file for you. So if you are someplace for a month and then decide to move someplace else, you might not get that documentation that you need. And likewise with the carte vitale, if you're starting a business here, all of that. So bouncing around before you get all of that set up could be complicated, because they might not be able to find you. You might not get the things that you need. So maybe even longer term, Airbnb or vacation rental by owner is something that might work. But if you're just planning for something that's shorter, that might not. There may be issues in terms of getting things that you need in the mail. All right. All right. Hi, Linda. So glad you could join us. All right. Did I have to bring all my medical records with me for my health exam? No, I think they wanted to see my vaccination when I was vaccinated for certain things, but not my medical records. When I did, one thing that I highly recommend is I scanned my medical records before I left the States. But one thing I didn't do was I did not get the images for my mammograms, things like that. And so I had a scare, or the technicians at the mammography place had a scare, because they saw calcification and they didn't have anything to compare it to. And so they were just panic stricken. And so one thing I recommend is to bring your images with you. If you scan your medical records, that's great so that you have them, but then also, bring the images with you, because you may need them. All right. All right. Is there anything, this is from 01AK Queen. Is there anything that you miss from the US? Do you feel a need to visit remaining friends and family, or are you content? I'm content. Last year I did not go back. Before, I'd gone back every year. Last year I didn't go back. I went back earlier this year, but I don't have any plans, any thoughts about going back anytime soon. So I'm pretty content. I think, yeah, there's certain things that I miss, but not that I long for or that make me think, oh, maybe this wasn't right. Right? It's France. France is different from the United States. The United States has some things that I appreciate, but I'm good here. I'm good here. Thank you for that question. Is French food as good as they say? I would say yes. And I was surprised. Now, you can go to a restaurant and, have bad food, but I was surprised at some of the restaurants that I've been to that just don't look like anything. Like, you're like, oh, well, this might not be that good, but I'm hungry and it's open, right? I've been pleasantly surprised at some places. So I would have to say yes. Yes, I think it's one of the things earlier on I said I'm here in France because beauty is a value of mine, a core value of mine, and I think that that translates into the food, the presentation, but also in how it's put together. Right? It's not just thrown together and. All right. What is a French dish that you prefer to cook or eat? All right. So I'm here in France and I will go out to a restaurant from time to time, but not, you know, not as often as if I were a tourist, right? And one of the things is funny. One of the things that I told myself in the first year or two is, oh, yeah, I want to learn how to cook French food. But what do I cook? I cook my American food, right? It's what I do. But there is one dish that I cook that's really good, and I had a couple of friends over last month for lunch, and it's called papillote au poulet à la moutarde. So it's chicken breast that you put on a sheet of aluminum foil, and you mix up in a separate bowl mustard and cream and some spices, and then you slather it over the chicken breast, and then you close up the foil, so you make a little, you know, container for the chicken, and then you cook it for about 20 minutes, and it comes out, and it's so moist and tender, and it's full of taste. So that's a favorite French dish that I like to cook. Papillote au poulet à la moutarde. I think that's what it's called. All right. These questions are keep coming in. I'm like, wow, you guys have lots of questions. Um, do you have to submit some of your documents translated to French to submit your paperwork? When I applied for my visa in the United States, no. When I did my driver's license exchange, I had to have my driver's license translated by somebody who's certified. My birth certificate, at some point, I had to have that translated into French. Maybe that was for the renewal of my visa. And that had to be by somebody certified. When I renewed my business visa, my profession liberal visa in the States, when I applied, my business plan was in English. When I renewed after the first year, I had to have that translated into French. Other thing, but I did that myself. I didn't need to be certified. Bank statements, I did not. I translated, the headings for the bank statements into French, but that I did that on my own, and that sufficed. So yes, some I needed to have translated by somebody certified, and others needed to be translated, but they didn't need to be translated by somebody certified. You're making me think, Junket 3000. What are some of the hardest things in sustaining life in France right now? I'm putting life in there. Which year has been the most challenging so far? I think one of the, and I speak about this in my videos all the time. I think one of the hardest things, and if you might not understand this, but you might, was, and I think became hard after the pandemic because it had experienced something different here after the pandemic or during the pandemic, but it was the personal space. So in the United States and some other countries, there is a perimeter around you that you just don't breach because that's your personal space. And here in France, it's smaller, sometimes non-existent. And so my first year here, I noticed at the supermarket, people were just right on me. I'd move up, they'd be right there. And it was a little uncomfortable, but it wasn't anything that I had a real problem with. So then the pandemic happened. And once I came back from the United States, because I was stranded there for 3 months, they still had social distancing. And while it wasn't the 6 feet, it was just 3 feet here in France. It was there and it was respected. And so I felt like, I've got my space. But once that went away, everybody's back up on me. And, in addition, it's not only in line, but it's also like if I'm standing, waiting to get to, the broccoli, right? I might stand there and there might be somebody there waiting to, getting the broccoli they want. And there'll be somebody else who just comes right in and just is right up next to that person. And I'm trying to, that whole thing was a big challenge for me. I have moved through that. And in recognizing that it's not disrespectful, them being so close to me is not disrespectful. And just, reminding myself of that and taking deep breaths, that has been a game changer for me. But, and it might seem trivial, but that has been hard. It just has been hard. So I think that's one of the hardest things. I think another hard thing for me was, so when I first came, I was on that visitor visa and I was living off of savings. And I think the money blocks and money concerns were a challenge for me as well. The French government wouldn't let me in unless I had enough to support myself each year. But seeing, there's something psychological about seeing your savings, go down and not having any income coming in. And so the end of my first year, that was like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? I need to do something. I need to find work. And so it was like a knee-jerk reaction to say, okay, I need to start a business now. And I went down the path actually of, start creating a business plan and thinking I was going to go for the profession liberale visa initially. But I just was not ready. I was not at a place where starting a business was right for me. And so I didn't, and I went for the visitor visa a second time. But again, in that second year, those fears, those money fears, that was really hard. And which has been the most challenging year so far? I mean, I think each year has brought with it something different. I think last year and this year by far have just been Well, last year was a rough year, right? But not necessarily because of things being different here. I struggled with a bout of chronic hives for close to a year last year. So I don't know if you've ever had hives, but they're itchy and sometimes they hurt, and they just drive you crazy. And I've had this before when I was in very stressful situations. My first job out of college, I was discriminated against, and that's the first time I had this chronic hives thing. And so people say, "Oh, are you under stress? Are you under stress? Are you under stress? Are you under stress?" And I'm like, "No, I feel like things are going for me now. They're going smoothly for me now. So don't really feel the kind of stress I had in that first job that created the hives in me, because when I got fired from that job, guess what? The next day, no hives. So yes, I know it can be a stress reaction in me. So last year was a rough year because I had that. And somebody suggested that perhaps that there was a buildup of stress, because I thought, oh, if I was going to have the chronic hives, why wouldn't I have it in my first or second year when things were so new and I was just really trying to find my way, not when things were kind of smoothing out. But somebody said, well, maybe it was a buildup of stress over the years that finally, hit its boiling point and then created the hives in you. And so last year was tough on that level. And then, I had to find a new doctor and I had to wait 9 months to see the allergist. And so that was a rough year. So, but not because of, me, making friends or getting acclimated, not on that level. But yeah, last year was a rough year. All right. Jess, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if you've seen the live stream I did with Shannon Griffin, who's in Paris. She's a member of the Carefree Expat Incubator program, and she came with her daughter, and we might speak to that there a little bit. You definitely need to be able to support both of you. Is it double? I don't know, because you're living in the same place, so you would need to have. I'm not sure. It's a good question. ATBG, do I like cassoulet? Yes, but it's so rich and hearty. And I had it the first time I had it. Well, I guess maybe the only time I had it was when I was in Toulouse or Albi, outside of Toulouse. And I had it. It was a summer day, and it was just so much, and it just sat on my stomach. But it was quite tasty. So yes. Let's see what else we got here. Looking for more questions here. See some comments. Jess says she gets hives too. It's environmental and allergies. For me, I know stress. Oh, another time I had chronic hives was I was living with my ex-boyfriend, and as soon as I kicked him to the curb, so I know for me, stress is a big factor in it. Linda Houston about the personal space. Yeah. So it's just different, right? And it's just I mean, and I'll be standing there waiting to wait for them to finish to go in. And then somebody goes in and I'm like, oh yeah, Patricia, you're not in the US. Just go get your stuff. All right. Let's see. Linda, all right. So your recent trip in January was totally different with your gray hair. A lot of courtesy and respect was shown to me as a madame versus mademoiselle. Thanks for sharing. Guto. Is French second language school available near where you live? When I was in Perpignan, I went to language school for about 6 months of my first year, and that was good. That was a great experience. I needed that because I didn't understand really why I was saying things the way I was saying. My reading and writing skills weren't where they needed to be, and I made friends there. So I think I highly recommend going to language school when you settle, because it's great for improving your language, but also meeting people. And they had cultural events, like they took us to different places that maybe we didn't know about, um, and we went together, so we didn't have to do it alone. Are there or voluntary work for seniors? Any idea? So that was one of the things that I thought that I wanted to do in Perpignan, so that I could be around people. I think I went to Red Cross, and they weren't really that receptive. I wasn't that insistent, so that didn't happen. But I'm sure there are probably opportunities to volunteer. By the book. It depends on where you are, I think. Um, I experience a long wait for the allergist. I feel like I'm kind of in a medical desert here. So I'm not in a Paris, I'm not in a Marseille, I'm not in a Montpellier, where I hear that the services, there are more doctors. It's bigger cities, of course, so there are more doctors. But I was just talking to my language exchange partner today. She lives in Rouen, which is not a small city, and her husband needs to get an implant, a dental implant. And she says, "Oh, yeah, his appointment isn't for another 8 months or something like that." And that surprised me, because she's in a bigger city, and I didn't think that she would have to wait. So I think it depends on where you are. Um, I can typically get to my doctor in a couple weeks' time, um, if I need an appointment. Typically, but you might not have seen a video I did recently, so that's why I say typically. All right. Um, So, is language school free, and do you receive a certificate of completion? So, when I went to language school, I paid for my on my own, right? So it wasn't free. When I went for the profession liberale visa, when it looked like, oh, she's going to be here longer term, we want to make sure that she has language skills. I had to take a language test as part of uh, the validation process, along with the health exam. And if I hadn't gotten to an I think one level at the time, I think now it's been increased to an A2 level in French, they would pay for language classes, um, a certain number of hours for language classes, so that you could get to that completion level. When I took my class that I paid for, I signed up to take the TCF exam, the Test de Connaissance du Français. And, but I paid for that, and that gave me a certain rating. Now, that was good, officially good for only 2 years. That expired. I did take the TCF exam again. That was paid for this time by the state, because I needed to show that I had a certain level of French. And but that's good for 2 years. So come January of next year, that won't be good. And it's not good for citizenship now because they've raised the level. So long answer. In some cases it can be, if you're, in on a track where they want you to have a certain level of French. All right. Tanya Thomas, I have not needed this because I have not gotten an apartment that is not a vacation rental by owner yet. Well, I'm not going to, because my next step is home ownership. So have I needed to get a guarantor to get an apartment or home rental? Yes, I believe that's the system, is you need a guarantor so that they feel comfortable in renting to you. And in some cases, having somebody help you with your dossier so that you can actually get an apartment can be helpful. I didn't have any challenges with it because I haven't gone through that process. So Guarant Me is I think, a reputable company that does the guarantor thing. This is a good one. I don't know that I can give you one off the top of my head. There's so many good ones. Talking about learning French, what is your go-to French TV show, movie, or YouTube channel to learn? That's a really good question. And like I said, the names of them, off the top of my head? That's a good question. Let me see what comes up. I think French in Plain Sight. I like that one. Of course, nothing that I watch is coming up. Oh, I like Learn French with Elizabeth. They're good, and she just had a baby. Is a couple who has conversations in French. Just everyday conversations, and you're learning the different words, and they put them on the screen. So French with Elizabeth is a good one. All right. And if you're interested in watching French TV shows and series and all of that, I'm going to put a plug in here. French Channel is a good streaming service. It's the #1 streaming service for French movies and TV shows and all of that. And if that's something you're interested in, when you go to the French Channel, and if you want to subscribe to a monthly or annual subscription, you can get 15% off the price by using promo code Patricia15. So French Channel, Patricia15. And they have a variety. They have news programs, and they have children's shows, and they have movies, and they have the series and documentaries. They have whatever you want. All right. All right. We're going to wrap up in the next 5 or so minutes. So Guarant Me here. Let me put this up here. Can you recommend reputable companies? Guarant Me, Guarntme, is the one that I've heard people use, but I don't have any others to recommend. Yeah, getting a French bank account can be challenging. I had help from my first landlord, and he vouched for me. He gave me a copy of his French identity card to go in my dossier, so that when I went over to the bank, they were more receptive. I also, when one of the things that I did when I was at that language school was a friend of mine, a Russian friend of mine who was in school with me. He said, "Oh, you need to talk to the administrative assistant because she can set you up with an appointment at the bank." So those were the two things that really helped me. And then I struggle, but because I didn't have direct deposit coming in regularly, a year later, when I was asking about my bank account or something, it's like, "Oh, you don't have a real bank account." And so I really didn't feel like I was, appreciated. But then when I did start my French business, that's when I started to feel respect and feel like I had a real bank account. Okay. Learn French with Alexa on YouTube. I follow Learn French with Alexa on YouTube. She's French, but lives in the UK. So she explains things in a way English speakers can understand. Good. Thanks for that recommendation. There are so many out there. I mean, I think it's just a matter of finding what suits you. All right. I think I have exhausted all of the questions. Did I have any that I didn't answer that were on my sheet? Yeah, I think that's it. I think we've done good today. We've done really good. All right. Let me leave you with these parting thoughts. So I've seen a lot of questions come through about the how, and I've got my own personal experience with that. If you're interested in having a session with me for more information where I can share what I know about the system based on my personal experience, you're more than welcome to schedule that. You can go to thecouragecatalyst.com/info session. Now, this is a paid session where you can ask me questions, logistical questions, and I answer again from my point of view, from my understanding of things. But if you are ready to make this move abroad and you are feeling a little bit stuck, hesitant, you've lost momentum, you're not really sure if you can do it, you really want to do this, but there's something holding you back, I would love to have a conversation with you to understand, what you're going through and why it is you want to move abroad. And I'd love to talk to you so that I can see that if our working together could help you move through the process more seamlessly and finally get to living in your dream country and start thriving there. And if that sounds like something that would help you, then by all means, go to thecouragecatalyst.com/future expat and schedule a complimentary discovery call. This call is complimentary, so we can explore, what it is that you are struggling with and what your next steps might be. All right. So if that sounds interesting to you, be sure to do that. I look forward to having conversations with you about that. And I think we've got all the questions answered. And I appreciate you, everybody who joined live, everybody who's watching the replay. These have been wonderful questions. And I look forward to having another live stream again soon. All right. So once again, thank you, everybody. And I'll see you again soon. Take care. Bye for now.